Rebecca LaPorte is the communicable disease nurse for the Oneida County Health Department and is on the line. We wanted to talk about immunizations and the crisis that I think it has reached a crisis level around the country because, and I feel it's social media that people are getting on. And why would you trust a doctor or somebody like Rebecca, who is a nurse, who's a specialist when it comes to healthcare? Why trust her when you can trust somebody that you've never heard of who's just on Facebook pretending to be someone who knows what they're talking about? That's where we are today. It's pretty scary. Rebecca, good morning. Thanks for coming on.
Good morning.
It is a bit worrisome that people are trusting somebody they have no clue about on Facebook and not trusting officials and people in the medical field like yourself.
I think one of the big problems is, across the United States, it looks like vaccination rates are pretty good, but then you get these pockets of people who aren't vaccinating at all, and the problem is they're surrounded by each other, so they have all this information to share with each other, and even though it's not accurate, they feel really supported because in their community they are.
And, I guess it is true, or maybe it isn't true, it hasn't been proven that there are small percentages of things in anything that go awry. Is that true? And they take those small numbers and they exploit those numbers, which scares the daylights out of parents?
Well, I mean, with any kind of medical procedure, there are things that can go wrong. But I think I've read some informational things that are given in anti-vaccine groups, and sometimes it's a lot of anecdotal, so sometimes they don't even give any real support,
Right, it's not even real
articles.
Data.
Yeah. This friend of a friend whose friend is a doctor heard that this happened, and they just put, the source as anonymous.
Right. So what does the Oneida County Health Department recommend? My guess would be that you get these vaccinations, especially something like the measles vaccination.
Of course. I mean, we recommend that you follow the recommended CDC schedule. There's a lot of alternate schedules where children aren't vaccinated all at once. I think a lot of people know when you go for these 2-month, 4-month, 6-month shots, your children get multiple vaccines at one time. Some parents become a little hesitant with that. They think it's a lot, and they do schedules where they get them a little bit more spread out. We do recommend that the CDC schedule is followed. At this point, there's a lot of combination vaccines that can be offered, so it's not too many needles, but the CDC schedule just gets them protected as early as possible from as many things as we can.
All right.
So, Rebecca, talk a little bit more, if you can, about how all vaccines are important. But I feel like important ones like chickenpox, measles, mumps, polio vaccine, or if they're if you even still need that one, but are kind of in the same category as a flu shot. So somebody say, "Well, I'm not get the flu shot because it could cause autism." And
if I can, Rebecca, Andrew is anti-flu shot, just for the record. So, I guess what you're asking is, what are when it comes to these immunizations, the level of importance? Are there some that you can skip and you would be okay with that? Is that where you're going?
Well, yeah, and also too. But like, if somebody's blaming the flu shot on autism, doesn't mean that you shouldn't get the other ones that are more important.
I don't know that anybody's blaming the flu shot on autism, but
I
maybe.
think it's more the MMR vaccine.
Yeah. So tell me what your thoughts are on that bundle of Andrew. Sorry.
See, I'm not sure where to start with it, but
yes.
I think that it's important to get vaccines and that they've become really a victim of their own success. We don't see a lot of polio cases. We don't see a lot of chickenpox or measles. So because we don't see these things, we don't see the negative things they can cause. The older generations have seen polio, and they remember people being in, the iron lungs and things like that. And they've heard of people dying from measles because of complications like encephalitis and chickenpox. They have scarring on their skin from the severe itching that it caused. There are all these things that can happen because of these infections that we don't see anymore.
Right.
So because of that, people think to themselves, is a polio vaccine really that important? We don't have polio, but getting them is important to make sure that we don't get it again. And I thought it was kind of interesting. There was a virus that they had identified earlier, I think it was late 2018, that they said was causing symptoms similar to polio. And we received a lot of questions asking, is there going to be a vaccination for that?
Yeah.
And I wondered to myself, geez, is this the same person who was arguing with me that their child didn't need a polio shot?
Right. And I find this all starts with, You hear some crazy story that something in a very rare situation could happen. And you say to yourself, well, listen, it's like recycling. I'm going to throw this stuff away. Everybody else is recycling. The couple of bottles I throw away aren't going to matter. The fact that my kids don't get the shot because everybody else is getting it, they're not going to contract any of these horrible diseases, and I won't put my kid at risk. It's a pretty selfish thinking versus thinking about the society as a whole, I guess.
Yep, I think what you're talking about pretty broadly is herd immunity. The idea that we have to have really high levels of vaccination in order to prevent the spread of disease in our community. So there are always going to be people who can't be vaccinated, people who have health issues like cancer or HIV. And so it's kind of the responsibility for those of us who are healthy and who can get our vaccines to get them to protect everybody else, too.
We covered a story a while back, and we're told that the story was incorrect, and maybe you can shed some light on it, that there was a top 50 list that was put out by the state of the top 50 schools that had the most unvaccinated students. And Perry Junior High in New Hartford actually made the list. It was the only one in Oneida County. Then we were later told that data was incorrect. It was incorrectly released by the state. Do you have any information on that?
I unfortunately don't have any information on that, but I do know that in terms of the schools in Oneida County, I think that the school nurses definitely believe that it's important to make sure everybody's vaccinated. And I know that school nurses have to look at the records every year and make sure that the kids that they see are up to date.
And what is the law in New York State? There are ways that you can avoid a vaccination for your child. Is it religion? What is the law?
The law is pretty specific, and I know at this point you choose to vaccinate due to personal beliefs. So, if I said I just don't believe in the vaccine, I think it has to be at this point a legitimate religious complaint or a medical complaint.
Okay. And that medical complaint could be that the child is suffering from some disease that maybe their immune system is low, maybe it's cancer, that sort of thing.
Exactly. I mean, there are a variety of things. Allergies could be one of them, too. There are indeed some people who have allergies to components of vaccines and can't receive them. So in that case, I mean, obviously that you can't be vaccinated if we're going to put you into anaphylactic shock.
Right. All right, fair enough. Anything you want to add on this other than how important it is to make sure that you're getting those vaccinations?
Just a little bit about the measles vaccine, just because we've been getting a lot of questions. In terms of evidence of immunity, you are considered immune against measles if you have any one of the following, which is documentation of vaccination, laboratory evidence that says you're immune, laboratory confirmation that you had the disease measles, or if you're born before 1957, we aren't really recommending that you need any MMR vaccines at this time if you have any one of those things. I think the most important, again, is birth before 1957 because you presume you're immune.
And there were stories out there that the fact that you've had the vaccination over years can deteriorate or wither away a bit. Is there any truth to that? That you'd need an update at some point later in your life?
Yeah.
We do say that in general, if you have documentation of your measles vaccine, that you are good to go. There are lab tests where they can draw your blood and see if you have antibodies, but we don't recommend them because we say that sometimes they're not completely accurate, so people may be over-immunized when they don't necessarily need to be.
Got it. Okay. All right, and obviously they can go to your website for details?
Yep, and they can call and schedule appointments if they think they may need an update on their vaccination.
All right. If we could only whack some of these people side the head if it was legal today. Just wake up, will you? For God's sakes, what are you doing? You're putting your kids in danger along with everybody else. But hitting people in the head apparently is not kosher these days. Yeah. Darn it. Okay, Rebecca, thanks for the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. It is crazy how we pay attention to some goofball on Facebook that we have no clue, no idea of their credibility. Yet when someone who is trained in this field, we sometimes just look at them like, well, we don't believe people. They're telling us that because they want us to think that it's not really true. Crazy.